Have you ever had a student completely shut down in class, or maybe they seem fine, but their grades are slipping, and you just know that something is off? These behaviors are usually a sign that our students need something, and that something is usually very simple. They need a connection. And we can do that with something really simple: small conversations. So in this episode, I'm going to share with you how just a few intentional moments of connection can transform your students' learning and help you to enjoy teaching again. Hey friends, welcome to Enjoy Teaching Again, a podcast for teachers who love teaching but need a little inspiration to bring the joy back. I'm your host, Elizabeth Peterson, classroom teacher, arts integration specialist, and your guide to making teaching meaningful, fun, and creative again. I know your teaching days are tough with disengaged students, battling behaviors, and going home each day feeling overwhelmed and exhausted. But together, we can change that. I can't wait to share with you some creative ways to engage your students, build those important connections, and teach with creativity, confidence, and purpose. It's time for you to enjoy teaching again. So locate that cold coffee of yours, grab your favorite pen, I know you have one, take a deep breath, and let's dive in. It's time to get inspired. If you're ready to make your classroom a place of calm connection and creativity where your students can actually thrive, well then I want to invite you to my free class, which is actually called How to Transform Your Classroom into a Place of Calm Connection and Creativity. Inside the class, I share my 3-step framework that I have used for years now and shared with hundreds of other teachers to transform their classrooms and improve their impact. I'll also share the 5 mistakes that you really should avoid when you're supporting your students' social and emotional development. And we'll also talk about why you don't need to act like the classroom therapist to have a calm classroom and what to do instead. I'm telling you, you do not want to miss this free class. So go to theinspiredclassroom.com/class, and I'll see you in there when you register. Now, we've all heard it time and time again, especially in the last few years, that we need to build, say it with me, build relationships in our classrooms. Yes, I know for some people, for some teachers, it has seemed like this has become such a cliche thing to say, but you know in your heart that it is so true. If we can build relationships with our students, their behaviors improve, and we can enjoy our teaching again. We can get to a place where we actually feel like our students are responding to us and they are learning, and we have that moment to actually teach. Students need connection before they can really dive into their academics. They can't learn if they don't feel safe. So these are some simple ways to just talk with students. It can be the shy one that never talks themselves. It could be the angry one that really just needs a little adjustment. It could be the loud student who can't sit still. Starting a small conversation with any kid, it's always a positive thing, and it's super easy to do. So I'm going to walk you through a few examples of how you can actually start a conversation with just about any kid. So I want you to have one student or maybe a couple students in mind as I'm going through some of these ideas so that you can put this into play. Okay? Do you have that person in mind? Do you have that kid's name in your head? All right, so let's get started. The first way to just start a quick conversation with students is to show an interest in something that they have, something physical. So they maybe have a cool backpack that you can, point out the design of it, or ask them where they got it, or if it shows something like SpongeBob on it, ask them if they watch the show, or, I have some girls right now who have Taylor Swift backpacks, just start a little conversation about it. Or maybe they have a keychain. Now, I know that so many kids right now have all these keychains and things hanging off of their backpacks. Maybe there's something in particular that can grab your attention, and that is something you can use to start a conversation. Now, I mention these things like backpack and keychain because, well, the greatest time to start a conversation is as your students are coming into the school or coming into your classroom. That's always a big transition time anyway. It's a great time, I should say, to have a quick little conversation with them. Maybe they have a fidget that you can draw attention to and ask them about it. Now, if you've already attended my free class, How to Transform Your Classroom into a Place of Calm, Connection, and Creativity, you may already know this story about Sam. But this is a story that is a great example of how conversations truly changed a student's behaviors. Sam was a student that I had in a 4th grade classroom a number of years ago, and he would always come into the classroom grumpy, bad attitude, chip on his shoulder, and when it came time for him to actually sit down and do something, it was refusal and slouching in the chair and grunts and just awful behavior. And it would never, he would just never want to participate in what we were doing. Well, I made the conscious decision to start building a relationship with Sam. And so I decided to try and have conversations with him every single day that he came into the classroom, which was actually every single day he was in my classroom. So I went over to Sam the first day and I started a little conversation and said, "Hi, how you doing?" And I didn't really get much of a response, but I kept on it the next day and the next day and the next day. And then finally he came in and he had a Rubik's Cube in his hand. And I asked him about his Rubik's Cube and he showed it to me. By now he would know that I was going to ask him how his day was or what have you. And he was in a habit of actually responding. So he showed me his Rubik's Cube and I showed some real genuine excitement for the Rubik's Cube. And I didn't talk about how, I had a Rubik's Cube when I was a kid or anything like that. I just kept my focus on him and I asked him, "Do you use it? How are you doing with it? Let me see." And he gladly showed me some of his skills, which actually weren't even that wonderful. But I raved about him and how he was able to kind of really just use his fingers and his dexterity so well and make it move so quickly. I thought that was really cool. And so there was a smile. Sam smiled at me. It was so great. And so that day, believe it or not, I kid you not, he actually sat down at the beginning of the school day, that particular day, and started to participate just a little bit more. Was it perfect? Of course not. But he was participating. And every day after that, I kept having these little conversations with him. Maybe it was about a fidget. Maybe I commented on his shoes. Maybe I started to learn more about him, like the fact that his household has a lot of cats. And so I asked him about his cats. And then I knew about his cat having a litter of kittens. And so I would ask him about that. And those little conversations in the morning made the difference between a productive day and a complete fail. And so those were 100%, I know for sure that I was able to help Sam turn it around every single day with a small conversation. And I tell you that right now as I'm introducing this first way to start a conversation because it's one of the simplest ways. If students have something, whether it's a cool shirt or new shoes or a new haircut or a fidget in their hand, which we all know they have so many fidgets in their hands now, that is the simplest way to break open a good conversation with your students. So, like I had a story with Sam, who is your student? Do you still have that kid's name in mind? All right, so let's go into the second way that you can start a conversation, and that is a personal check-in. As you get to know some of your students a little bit better, this personal check-in can really start a good conversation. Maybe it's as simple as what's been the best part of your day so far? Or what did you have for breakfast this morning? Or tell me something interesting that you learned so far this week. You want to stay away from just asking something like, how are you? Because even though that might be a good way to start, it often gets a one-word answer, right? So you might want to ask them, what is your favorite this? Or what is your least favorite that? Or I'm really curious, what is your favorite color? How come that's your favorite color? So start asking a little bit more of a personal check-in of your student. The third way to start a conversation is when you really are starting to get to know your students and you notice that they have a talent or an interest. Like for me with Sam, once I found out that he was a cat family and I'm a cat person, I had so many questions and so many things to talk to him about and ask him, and genuinely wanted to know about his litter of kittens and how everything was going and all that kind of stuff. So when you notice a talent, point that out and ask the student about them. Maybe they're a doodler and you can ask them, I saw you doodling in your notes. Do you like art? What else do you do? Do you ever use, paint? Do you ever paint at home? Do you have things that you can show me? Maybe you have a student who is always clicking his pen or drumming on his desk, and you can ask him, hey, are you into music? Do you play an instrument? So many students, and I teach a creative class right now, and sometimes their talents just go under the radar. And so when I see a student come in with like a t-shirt that has a drum set on it, I get really excited and I say, hey, do you play the drums? So do I, or at least I kind of pretend I do. And so we can start a little conversation about those kinds of things. These types of, just showing interest in your students, and I don't have to tell you this, right? You know this, it builds trust and it helps your students to really feel seen. And so instead of holding those things in, being very open and vocal about that and having it be able to not just make an observation, but then start a conversation with a question can really make it so that your students not just feel seen, but they feel heard and even understood. And boy, does that help build relationship. So those are the 3 ways that you can start a conversation. Show an interest in something physical that the student actually has on them. Start asking maybe some personal check-ins about what their favorite this or their least favorite that is, or something they found interesting. And then the third way is to notice a talent or an interest that they have and start asking them more questions and digging a little deeper with that. So when can these types of quick conversations happen? Well, they should happen regularly. First of all, you don't want to just, have a big bulk of a day where you asking everybody questions, but, they should just kind of slip into your routine. Greeting students at the door, that's a fantastic time to do that. Especially if you have a class of students that have coming in with backpacks and maybe their snow gear or whatever it is that they're putting things away and they're starting in on their transition activity in the classroom. Maybe you make time in the morning for this kind of 2-minute morning chats. Give yourself the goal of connecting with 1 or 2 students. Now for me, I have bus duty every morning this school year, and I am constantly saying, hi, how's it going? That kind of thing to every student that kind of walks through and filters through the door. But I also intentionally pick at least 2 students to try and have a quick little conversation with them at the beginning of the day. And that's what I want you to do. With this student that you have in your head right now, I want you to think about that student, or maybe even 2 students, that this week you can focus on them and really ask them these conversation starters every single day this week for the next 5 school days and see what happens. And one other thing to just keep in mind is if you are trying to do this with your core group of students, I want you to make sure that you are keeping track of who you're having these conversations with. There are always going to be students that kind of fly under the radar, and maybe, they get, you think that they're on a good track and they're doing just fine and they don't need this extra attention. I mean, we've all fallen into this trap. I know that I have as well. And so I want to challenge you to actually keep track of the students that you are, well, to start intentionally having conversations with. But then as you go through, what I would do is I would actually have a class list, one of my rosters, and I would check off the names of students that I have actually had some good conversations with, so that I can just make sure I'm not leaving anybody else out. And when you have just a class of 20 to 30 students, that's something simple you can do to just make sure that you're always talking and starting these little conversations with all your students. So this week I want to challenge you to pick that one student and try it out. Start a conversation with that one student every single day for the next 5 days, and then I'd love to hear how it goes. You can share inside of our Inspiring Teachers Facebook group. I'll leave a link to that in the show notes. And when you're ready to go even deeper into building a calm, created, and connected classroom, I want you to check out my free class. Go to theinspiredclassroom.com/class, where you will get some more ideas of how these types of proactive strategies like this can help your students to transition into learning and help you to enjoy teaching even more. I can't wait to hear from you. I hope this episode inspired you, encouraged you, or gave you a fresh idea to try. And if so, I would love for you to take a screenshot and text it to one of your teaching buddies. I'm so grateful that you landed here with me today, and it would mean the world to me if you would leave me a review over on Apple Podcast. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll catch you on the next episode. This is Elizabeth Peterson reminding you to get inspired so you can be inspiring to your students and enjoy teaching again.